Welcome to episode 27 of the Gambots podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and this is my co host.
It's Christian.
On this week's episode, Christian is going to discuss a play he read called No Exit. Christian saw Captain Marvel. I'm going to give a shout out to two comic runs that I read. I platinumed the game The Order 1886. Devil May Cry 5 was released this week, and also Pokemon Sword and Shield was announced last week, so we'll talk about that a little bit. But first, Christian, you read the play No Exit. I have not heard of this. What is it?
Well, it's old for one thing. It came out in 1944, I believe it was, and it's written by a French existential philosopher named Jean-Paul Sartre. It's essentially about three people who are trapped in hell together in a single room.
So, how does the author tie in the existentialist ideas into this play?
It's mostly just an examination of people and how they react to one another. This is a semi-famous work. I mean, I'm sure it's very famous among the people who would read this kind of stuff, but not so much maybe for the general population. The phrase "hell is other people" is from this play, which is often misquoted to mean people are the worst, when usually it's more meant to mean that we judge ourselves through the lens of how other people see us. And so when we're around people, we're constantly in like a small state of hell just because we're always aware that they're seeing us and judging us in some way or another.
When you're talking about this actually reminds me of at least the premise of the good place of Michael's creation of their prison, where they're supposed to torture each other indefinitely, but it doesn't necessarily work that way.
So Michael Schur is the one of the showrunners and the show creator for Good Place, and he's said that he based the concept of that show loosely on No Exit, because it is just about four people who are trapped in hell and they torture each other psychologically. The difference is that in No Exit, the three characters know they're in hell from the beginning. They know exactly what this is. They know that they're being punished for their time. They know they're in hell. Whereas in The Good Place, they don't for most of the first season.
I had no idea that the premise for The Good Place was based on another work so closely.
Yeah, so it's just basically about these three people, and it's not very long. It's a fairly short read. I read it over a couple of days, but if you were dedicated to it, you could definitely read this in an afternoon. But it's just about these three people going about their time. They're trapped in a single room together, and they don't need to be tortured because their personalities are so opposed to each other that just the presence of the other people is torture for one or both of the others. So it's just by their mere existence near each other, they're torturing each other.
You say that their personalities are so different. Can you give an example of that?
Well, so one is like a socialite, kind of like a Tahani character, and one is like I believe he was a deserter from the army, and so he like ran away to Mexico. I can't remember exactly what the backstory was for the third one, but they all get along a little bit at first, and then they start slowly driving each other crazy. Like the one will constantly mock the man for deserting, and she calls him a coward and whatever else, and then she wants to be loved, and so he strikes up a relationship with the other one instead, just to spite her. And so they just kind of go about their lives in direct opposition with each other all the time. And it's kind of the idea that people in hell might all be bad, but that doesn't mean they're going to get along. They're going to be bad to each other. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I said, it's from 1944, so some of the language is a little strange today, and it's a little dense. But I think it's good for how short it is. I don't know how long you could carry this concept. Even in The Good Place, by the end of season one, they had abandoned the idea of like self torture in hell. So even they knew, I think, that that kind of a concept had an expiration date in its length. I think it benefits from its brevity.
So, did you? I'm guessing you have not actually seen the play for this. You've just read it.
Correct.
I'm curious how the play would go because it feels like it would be a relatively easy play to set up if they're just in a sitting room the entire time.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just one sitting room. There's four characters, the three people there, and then the valet who brings them in at the beginning, and that's it. So one set, four characters, very minimal. it's something that I could see a lot of like schools or colleges doing just because of how easy it would be to set up.
Yeah. So would you suggest people check this book out or this play out?
Yeah, sure. If like if it's your cup of tea, absolutely. If you're into reading a little bit something a little strange, something a little philosophical, it's definitely not like a normal thing, but like I said, it's real quick. You can definitely do it in an afternoon if you're committed to it.
This weekend, Captain Marvel premiered, and Christian, you got a chance to see it. What did you think of it?
I loved it. I watched it twice already.
Really, I have seen mostly positive reviews about it, but I have seen a thing here or there that says it's kind of boring and formulaic. So I'm really intrigued to hear your thoughts on it.
To be fair, it is kind of formulaic. Like there's never a point where I wasn't pretty sure I knew where it was going. There are a couple twists and turns, but if you've seen the volume of movies that I have, they're not super surprising. But for a more casual moviegoer, it might be a little more exciting of a twist. On the whole, it's just a fun movie. Like I don't go to a Marvel movie to be like shocked and surprised and like really get, oh man, like what a marvel of cinematic work. I just go to have fun. That's what the Marvel movies are about, and in that, it succeeded spectacularly.
So how was Brie Larson in this?
She was really good. I think everybody in it was really good. Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson have a fantastic dynamic. Their banter is perfect. They really play off each other well. Speaking of Samuel L. Jackson, they hit him with their age regression technology since this movie's supposed to take place in like the early 90s, I believe. So it starts with her crashing into a, well, yeah. So her time on Earth starts with her crashing into a blockbuster that's fully operational and not just a hollowed out husk of a building. But they hit Samuel L. Jackson and Clark Gregg, who plays Agent Coulson, both with their age regression technology. And even since Civil War, because they edited Robert Downey Jr.'s age at the beginning, and it looked a little off still. But even since Civil War, they've made amazing strides because Samuel L. Jackson and Clark Gregg looked amazing in this movie.
Yeah, I have seen some clips of Samuel and the previews and everything, and I was pretty amazed with how they had him looking.
Yeah, they did a great job. But the acting as a whole is awesome. The two of them, like I said, are the main characters. They're great with each other. Jude Law plays Brie Larson's mentor, and Annette Bening is a different mentor who she kind of can't remember but kind of can, because Carol Danvers, who's the main character, has amnesia in this movie, which is an angle that I feel like it's a little played out. I've seen it a lot, especially considering amnesia doesn't really work the way it does in movies. But in this one, it doesn't detract too much. There's enough plot lines going that it doesn't really get bogged down in the amnesia angle. But the breakout character, I think, is Ben Mendelsohn, who plays the Skrull General Talos. He is so good in this. Like he was my favorite character by a mile. He's funny, he's quirky, he's menacing when he needs to be. It was an excellent performance.
So I'm really interested to see this one because outside of Black Panther, I know probably the least about Carol Danvers and Captain Marvel as a whole from the comic books. The most I know from her was the spinoff series from the 2015 crossover event Civil Secret Wars. I read that whole thing and I read a bit of her, so I have a general idea of what some of her powers are, but I really don't know any background on Carol Danvers or Captain Marvel. I'm pretty interested to see how this plays out because I'm really going in there at almost zero information.
That's kind of how I was as well, and I think that was fine. Like this is the same as most other Marvel movies where they kind of assume at this point you don't have a working knowledge of the universe, and so really walk you through everything kind of from go. And yeah, she's essentially just a normal human who gets supercharged somehow. She gets these amazing powers that are at certain points essentially godlike.
And then also on top of that, similarly, the scrolls, I don't have a ton of information on them other than the most I've read about them was Joss Whedon's run of the X-Men comic in 2004. They fought some Skrulls in part of it, but otherwise they're kind of one of those factions of enemies that are just out there that I've not read a lot on. So, does it seem like they're going to be bringing them more into the Marvel universe, or was this kind of a one-off for this movie, or will it just stay in their cosmic line with like the Thors, Guardians of the Galaxy type deal? If you do you have any idea?
I could see them bringing them back in some of the cosmic movies. It could really go either way though. The way this movie ends is kind of cliffhanger-ish because it's definitely trying to set up Endgame in a lot of ways. So I could see the Skrulls making a bit of a comeback when Captain Marvel returns. I could see them just being like background characters in like Guardians and Thor. Well, I guess Thor isn't getting any more movies, but in Guardians movies moving forward, and maybe an Adam Warlock movie or something like that. But they're interesting, and I definitely hope to see more of Ben Mendelsohn as Talos because he, like I said, he was outstanding.
So, looking at this on Rotten Tomatoes, it has an 80%. And then, do you know its box office so far?
Yeah, so its box office crushed. It made a little over $150 million this weekend. I think it was 153 million, if I'm remembering correctly. That's coming in after all those guys made that big stink about trying to downvote it on Rotten Tomatoes before it even came out to try and like bomb the box office sales. It made a ton of money. I couldn't find much information on a budget, so I don't know if it made its budget back or not, but I'm sure it's going to one way or another. But yeah, 153 million in one weekend is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know if any social media campaign can really derail a Marvel movie release. Like, it's a juggernaut unto itself, and even mediocre Marvel movies are still generally, they're just fine movies. You know what you're getting at this point, and people are going to go see them, especially because it's tied so closely to Endgame.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like if you want to watch Endgame and get as much out of it as you can, you're gonna have to have watched this movie. There's no way they're gonna derail Endgame no matter how hard they try. So with this one being tied so closely to it, it was kind of a futile effort from the beginning.
Yeah, and I've seen a little bit on Twitter and stuff, people complaining about it, but it's just one of those things like this. Not only is it making bank and box office, you got to think long term life of this movie. You have multiple weeks where it's going to make its money back, and then you have DVD sales, streaming rights. You put it into syndication. Like this thing's going to make money. Like every Marvel movie makes money. I guarantee you, Iron Man 2, which is horrible, is still making money for them.
Probably right.
Just one last thing. What exactly is Captain Marvel's powers?
They're pretty broad and not super well defined in this movie. She goes through most of this movie not really understanding most of her powers, not until like the final confrontation where she has, the superhero moment where it was like, "Oh man, I can do this and this and this," and then it becomes kind of she can do everything. So it's not quite Superman level, but like it's up there. Like I said, some of her powers border on godlike towards the end of this movie. She can definitely fly. She can shoot like laser blasts kind of out of her hands. She might be bulletproof. That one's a little unclear.
She's pretty strong too, right?
Yeah, she's definitely super strong. So we'll see if her powers after like 2 decades of being out in the universe are any more well defined or refined in Endgame here in about a month.
It's really interesting to me that Endgame is, I mean, maybe we're wrong on this, but it seems like Endgame is hinging a large part of its resolution on a character that has not been in the Marvel lexicon for like the 10 years that Iron Man and Captain Marvel, or even the 5 years like Guardians or Thor, or Black Panther at least had a couple appearances beforehand. Like Captain Marvel's kind of coming out of right field, and I'm really interested to see how this goes over. If people, for people who just go and see Endgame Part Two, and don't see this.
Yeah, it's true. She's gonna be making a splash kind of out of nowhere, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Staying in the Marvel universe, I have recently read two runs of two separate comics I just want to give a quick shout out to. The first one was Daredevil Man Without Fear by Frank Miller. You can check this out on Marvel Unlimited if you have it. It's a pretty interesting read. This is Frank Miller writing in his prime. It's this one follows the origins of Daredevil. It's totally like 80s Marvel art though, which I think is pretty iconic in itself. It's interesting to see how the art in the comics has changed. The view of New York in the 80s is bonkers to me. Like I've been to New York probably the first time in like 2008 and I've been there pretty consistently since then. And I think there are some bad parts of New York, but generally like I've never felt like New York was unsafe. And Frank Miller's portrayal of New York in the 80s, like Hell's Kitchen and everything, is just makes it seem really dangerous. And I know back in the day it really wasn't. They made an effort to really clean up the city. So it's just crazy to me that, 30, 40 years ago, New York was a lot different and way more dangerous. And it's reflected in that, I think, in the comics where you see like all the superheroes congregating in New York because back in the day, I guess it really was pretty dangerous. I really did like the art style and I suggest you check it out. I've never been a big Daredevil guy, but reading this made me want to check out some more of his comics.
Nice.
And the other run I read was Identity Disc by Robert Rohde. This is a story that I think is pretty awesome. I previously talked about the Superior Foes of Spider-Man, how it was you're always guessing what happens, and this one I have seen described as the usual suspects, but all the people compiled together are supervillains. I've never seen the usual suspects, so I can't attest to if that's true or not, but that's what I have read online. So in this one, they pull together Deadpool, Bullseye, Vulture, Sandman, Sabretooth, and Juggernaut to pull off a heist for what's called the Identity Disc, and it is basically a CD that has the identity of every superhero in the world, or at least the United States, and where they're located and everything. And they have to break into an AIM facility to get it. And so they're employed by Tristram Silver, who sort of a blind spot on me. I have not heard of him before, but he has dirt on all these guys to get them to do this job. So it's interesting seeing all these villains. And arguably at this point, Juggernaut and Deadpool were not villains; they were anti-heroes or whatever. But seeing them interact with each other and pulling off this job is pretty awesome, and I really do suggest checking it out. Both of these comics that I'm suggesting, I think they're only about 6 issues per for each of them, so they are really quick reads. This past week, I platinumed the game The Order 1886, and I don't know. I know you just got a PlayStation 4, Christian. Have you heard anything about this game? It's a little bit older.
I have not.
So this was released in I think 2015. I might be wrong on the release date, but it was closer towards the beginning of the PlayStation 4's life cycle. It was developed by Ready at Dawn. These guys were mostly known for doing like the PSP God of War games. And when it originally came out, it was pretty much lambasted. It has a Metacritic score of 63%. So Sony really used this to show off like the PlayStation 4's graphic capabilities, and it looked pretty awesome in the early trailers and stuff. Like I remember the advertising campaign not the advertising, but like the E3 reveals and stuff like that. And they made it out to be where you're essentially playing a werewolf hunter in London in 1886, and it looked really, really cool.
Huh.
And it's basically a third-person cover shooter, and you only fight werewolves a couple times, and mostly you're just shooting generic enemies. Some cool things about this game, though, they do have a large variety of weapons, and they have some cool sciencey ones. Like you meet Nikola Tesla, so you get an electricity gun. You get another gun that shoots out thermite, and then you shoot flares to set people on fire, and then you just have machine guns or pistols or whatever. And it's interesting the technology they put out there for the year being 1886 in London. It's a really cool story, and I'll get into that a bit. But I can totally see why people lambasted this game. It was kind of a bait and switch where you think you're going to be doing this cool stuff, and then it turns into a game like Uncharted or Gears of War or Mass Effect, and not even like as good as those games. It just takes that system.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, and another issue with the game was it was really short. I mean, it still is. I think it took me maybe 10 hours to beat. I remember some people said they ran through it in 6. It took me like 10 hours to platinum. So it's a pretty short game. People beat it in 6, and that, everyone's like, I paid $60 for this and they felt a little bit cheated. So I can totally see why people didn't like this at first, but I picked this up for around $7, and I gotta say I really enjoyed the game. I thought the story was great. You essentially take the role as one of the Knights of the Round Table in the year 1886, and you're trying to uncover a plot by some rebel group that's trying to overthrow the East India Trading Company, and it just goes from there. There's twists and turns, stories of betrayal and revenge, and I really, really like this story. My biggest problem with it was, and I think a lot of people complained about this at the time, when it ends, like it feels like that should be either the halfway or the 75% way through the game. Like it just ends kind of abruptly with the main bad guy still just floating out there, and it looks like they're setting it up for a sequel instead of just finishing this out entirely. So it was a really interesting choice on their part to end it there.
Yeah, that's pretty odd.
Yeah, and then, this game did feel a little bit repetitive in the combat department at times. The werewolf encounters were not nearly as fun as they should have been. When I got to them, I mostly just ended up standing in a corner because it's hard to move and aim and see where these things are coming from. So you just kind of stand where you can see them coming and keep shooting them and dodging until they leave, and they just come at you and run away, come at you and run away. Like the monster hunting element of this was not fun. It was probably the least fun part of the game I had. So they really failed that part. So it's like one of those things where it's hard to really judge this game because I'm playing it 4 to 5 years after it came out, and I thought it was fun, but I see why people wouldn't. It's a really easy platinum. Like I said, I got it in about 10 hours. You just have to play through the main storyline. Nothing's tied to difficulty. You have to get so many kills, like headshots, or you have to get it one kill with every weapon or set people on fire or whatever. It's most of them come through just natural play. Like it's a very short game. If I had to rate this game overall, I think I'd put it somewhere in like a C plus. It's something like if you like cover based shooters or heavy narrative driven games, I'd check it out, but it might not be your cup of tea. I think it really just depends on the price. One other thing I want to point out that also drives the score down for me a little bit is there are, I think, 15 chapters in this game. A couple of the chapters are literally just like 5-minute cutscenes, so I don't know why they're classified as chapters. And then they have forced walking in this game, so you move really slow at times, and it's just like, why can't I run right now?
Yeah, that's never a great choice.
So overall, I think I'd rate this, like I said, C plus. It's one of them where it's like, yeah, I would like an easy platinum, or I want a narrative game, but just know that it's coming with it has some shortcomings.
Yeah, it sounds like a $7 game. I definitely would not have wanted to do this for $60.
So last week, a new Pokemon game was announced, and it is called Pokemon Sword and Shield, and it will be released on the Nintendo Switch. Have you got a chance to check out any of this, Christian?
A little bit, yeah. This is the one based on supposedly on Great Britain, right?
Yes, the region is going to be the Galar region, and it's speculation, at least I don't know if it's been confirmed, that Great Britain is the setting of it, because one of the older games, X and Y, was based in France, the French region.
Yeah, I have seen a little bit on this. I know they released the starters. I'm not sure if they released any other names or images from this new generation.
Yes, so the starters are Grookey, Scorbunny, and Sobble. Did you have one that you would think you would lean towards taking over the others?
I'd probably take Sobble just because I've taken the water based in almost every game since I've started playing.
Yeah, I used to like the fire ones, and this is, getting into it with the past games. They have had so many fire fighting starters, and I'm pretty sure Scorbunny is going to be another firefighting type. You can see it has like, at least it looks like a bandage over its nose, which tends to indicate that that's like something to do with a fighting type.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be really disappointed if they do that again because I don't think any fans ever wish for that type. If I had to pick one, I would pick, I think, Grookey. I think he looks pretty cool. He's like a grass monkey or something.
Yeah, I used to take the fire ones as well when I was younger, but then I feel like the water type was easiest when you were fighting like your rival and they had grass instead of whatever else. And I always felt like the water versus grass combo was the most advantageous versus like instead of grass versus fire, fire versus water. So I took water probably from gold onward.
Yeah, I think at the very least in Pokemon Red and Blue, I think you're definitely right on the water type because if they take Bulbasaur, you at least have a flying type to handle Bulbasaur. If you take Charmander, you have to find either an electric or a grass type, and I don't think any of the grass types were particularly powerful in that first generation. Like you have Bellsprout or the Oddish lines or the like an executor or something, but I was never a big fan of those guys, and you kind of don't get them till a little bit later. So I think you're right about that. About at least I think water was one of the easier ones to take for the first generation.
Yeah.
So this is going to be released in 2019. Just looking at some of the video, it looks like the battle mechanics are basically going back to the XY Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire and then Sun and Moon style on the 3DS. It looks like it's not like the Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee style where there's a Pokemon following you, you can see them on the world map, and then you have to just throw to catch them. It looks like it actually has the old style battles. And I'm a little bit disappointed by what I'm seeing on this because the Switch has fairly good power. Like, it can play essentially PS3 era games fine. And in this, they are reverting to the same stuff they've had on the 3DS games where you have two separate characters standing on one side of the battlefield, and then like if you attack, you see your Pokemon do an attack, and then you see an attack animation over there that's unrelated to your Pokemon, basically, and then you see the other side react to it. Like I feel like each Pokemon at this point should have its own modeled moves and everything to really put this game over the top, but it doesn't look that way, and I'm a little bit disappointed by that.
Yeah, it is surprising that they haven't really tried to move forward with that. They've just been content to continue with the mechanic that they've had.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I really feel like this was the chance. This is the first time it's going to be a mainline game on a console. Like, they could have really did something cool with this, but they. It seems like Pokemon games are adverse to change. They move very, very incrementally, and then they move away from things that people like. Like people really liked in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee that you could have your starter or at least any Pokemon follow you around outside the ball. And it looks like they've taken that out of the game, which is like no, like keep that. That's a cool mechanic.
Yeah, it's a lot of odd choices.
Yeah, but I will say Pokemon. It's weird, right? Like I think they take the easy way on some routes, but then they also have one of the most in-depth breeding systems that I feel like you could teach like a science course based on like chromosomes and stuff because they have like inheritance of abilities and traits that you only get from certain parents, and it's just like really complicated to try and breed a perfect Pokemon. That mechanic's so in depth, but then they don't want to go and change other things. So it's just so weird their choices they make on them. But I'm really excited to play this game. I haven't played a Pokemon game since Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. And last time I played, I created a living Pokedex. So, like, I had one of every Pokemon in existence at that point, and then I skipped Sun and Moon because I kind of burned myself out after doing that. So I don't know if I would ever do a living Pokedex again unless I could transfer like the 500 or whatever Pokemon I already have into this game, which I'm hoping I can. I am excited though to check this one out. And in our final news of the week, Devil May Cry 5 was released this past Friday. And I gotta say, Christian, I'm really excited. I ended up picking this game up day one. I generally don't do that, but I used to be a huge fan of the series. Have you ever played the Devil May Cry games?
Not a single one, but I was actually just talking about them last night with a friend of mine.
Oh, really? I think they're awesome. Like I played the first one when I was in middle school and the second one, and I think I might have been a freshman in high school when the third one came out. The second one and the third one were definitely day one buys for me. And I never played the fourth one because I didn't have a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox 360 at the time that it came out. So, and then I just never got around to picking it up once I got them a couple years later. You kind of fell off. I fell off of the series a little bit, and then the reboot of it didn't really talk to me, but then I saw the preview for this, and it's essentially made me remember what I loved about the original games. Like every character exudes just being cool somehow in the most outlandish situations. Like I've only played I think 2 or 3 chapters right now, and there's like 20, but it's so much fun because I don't know, you're like part demon in this and you shoot everything, you have unlimited bullets. Like they're at least in the first game, I haven't had a chance to try it out with this cuz I haven't played with Dante yet, but you could like hit an enemy into the air and then just like shoot them with your handguns and keep them floating there. Like everything you do in this game is awesome. Like if you get really good at the combos, like they're so cool. There's this move in here, I haven't got to it yet, but one of your characters is missing an arm, so one of the attachments you get is essentially just a rocket arm that you launch and just keeps punching an enemy while you do other stuff. There's some way where you can shoot it and then just jump on top of it and ride it like a surfboard and like hit enemies and guide it, and it's off the wall stuff like that against like these like grotesque demons. It's so awesome. And then like the whole soundtrack's like this weird like mixture of hard rock and techno. Like it's so good.
That's awesome.
I mean, I shouldn't say this game's so good. I really like what I've played so far. I've like I said, I haven't even gotten through like a quarter of the game. But it seems like totally a throwback to like the PS2 heyday that I love. If this, I know you're not a fan of this, so I don't know if I would suggest you picking it up for $60. But if you ever get a chance to play it, I really suggest you do, man. Like they have the collection on the first at least I think the first 3 games on the PS4. They recently released an HD collection of it. You can probably get that for like 20 or $30. Like the third game alone was probably one of the best PlayStation 2 games. So I'm just going to give a little background because I never get to talk to anyone about Devil May Cry. So first game was pretty hard. They have like so they have like normal difficulty, hard. Then I think it goes called like Dante Must Die, and then Son of Sparta, then Dante Must Die, something like that. Like they have basically 4 difficulty levels, or 5 if you want to count the easy mode if you die too much, that you can choose. And so like that game was pretty challenging at the time. Like it was known for it. And then the second game came out and was like really easy. Like I ended up I think beating it on the hardest difficulty, which I never do. So that's how easy it was. And a lot of people complained about it. So then like Capcom must have taken these complaints to heart and trolled the fans because when they released the third game, they made the default normal mode in the original North American release the hard mode in Japan. So I remember picking the game up and just getting crushed on like the second or third mission. Like you had to fight this monster called Cerberus, and like he was surprisingly challenging considering the other games, and then you like hear that this is actually the hard mode and it's just like, man, like this is challenging. So this game is not as hard as that, thankfully, because that like I really like that game, but man, it was hard to play through. It was like better once you got used to everything and unlocked powers and stuff, but the early goings was rough. So this one's been really fun so far.
Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye out, see if I can find it on sale at some point.
Yeah, I could go into more. It's like in this one you play as 3 different characters, Nero, Dante, and V. Nero so far is gives me vibes as like the Devil May Cry 3 Dante, but I haven't got a chance to play as the other two. One of them you don't actually directly fight; you control like demons. So I'm really interested to see how that works out. But Capcom has been crushing it so far this year. First, they released the Resident Evil 2 remaster, which had received glowing reviews, and then they have released this, which is released to generally glowing and positive reviews. Last year they had Monster Hunter World. Like they've had a pretty good run here lately. All right, now it's time for our Amazon review game. Just a quick recap. I'm going to read a 5-star Amazon review for a movie. Christian is going to get 2 yes or no questions and can either guess the movie or ask for another review. I will read another review. He will get 2 more yes or no questions. He can ask for 1 more review, and then he has 2 more questions, and then we'll have to guess. And this year we are keeping score, so if he gets it on the first review, it's 3 points. Second review, it's 2 points. Third review, 1 point. Christian, are you ready?
I am ready.
I just watched this for the first time in probably 35 years. Unlike many fondly remembered films of my youth, this one didn't really feel all that dated. It didn't quite have the shock factor as it did when I first saw it, of course, but the script and the acting felt quaint rather than hokey, as a lot of 70 classics feel. And Robert Shaw. I don't think I realized what a tremendous character he was until now.
Oh wow. Is this movie a comedy?
No.
Ooh. Is this an action movie?
I don't think you would classify this as an action movie, but I would say it's like action adjacent.
Okay. I'm definitely going to need another review.
It's been 43 years since I've first seen this movie, and I find it interesting. I haven't been in the ocean since. I can't say that it is directly because of this. It's much more likely that geography is the trigger, but I still wonder. When one watches this movie, one must remember this is the movie that set up standards towards this type of adventure. Many of the characters may seem somewhat stereotypical, but at the time I saw it, this film was pretty believable. The movie is as incredibly watchable from the opening attack until the creature's demise.
Is it Jaws?
Yes,
All right.
there's like it's hard to find a review on this that like is not just like the shark is awesome.
Yeah, I can imagine. I like you said Robert Shaw, and I'm turning it over in my head, and I'm like, I know that name from something.
All right, guys, thanks for checking out our show. Before we head out, Christian, what are you going to be playing or watching this week?
So it's mostly going to be video games. There's a bunch of movies that come out this week, but our theater's only getting two of them, 5 Feet Apart and Wonder Park, and neither one's really piqued my interest. Probably not on movies. I'll probably just watch Captain Marvel again. I've been playing Horizon Zero Dawn on PS4, which I know we've talked about a bit on this show already since you've been playing through it. But I gotta say, I can't say enough about this game. It's absolutely amazing. I haven't had this much fun playing a video game, and I can't tell you how long.
Yeah, dude, I like see you playing sometimes on the PlayStation. I'm like, I wonder what Christian's doing right now. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, like I just got past where you get like sent out into the world. You get made a seeker, and they're like, go do your thing, whatever that thing might be. And I immediately stopped playing the main story, and I've just been doing side quests like crazy. I'm having so much fun. Like I never expected to have this much fun in an open world game. It's beautifully made. It's smooth. The gameplay is fantastic. It's just yeah, I never thought I'd have this much fun just crouching in a bush waiting for like a robot saber-toothed tiger to wander my way.
The world map in that is created really well. Where right now, like you're on like the far corridor on the right side, and you go through and they introduce new enemies in each environment. So it's pretty awesome, especially when you start fighting like the huge T Rex guys or like the Thunderbirds or like these huge pterodactyl man. It's so fun.
Yeah, I keep like every now and then I'm like, oh, I've explored a lot, and I'll zoom out on the map, and I'm like, ooh, no, I'm a quarter of the way through this map right now. It's enormous. But I just finished up one of the cauldrons, so I can I can override some of the bigger monsters now. I don't have to worry about fighting a sawtooth every time I see it.
Yeah, well, that's what's rough in the beginning because you're like, oh, that thing's pretty challenging, and then towards the end, you have so many different items. Like, have you been using like the trip casters and the bolt casters or whatever, like those things?
I used them a little bit. I so far I've just been enjoying using the bow and arrow and the staff. Like the now that I can ride stuff around, that's been fun. I had a couple real nice like sniped with the bow from I mean it's not really horseback, but from horseback. So that was nice. I like the level up system with like getting the skill points. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the sphere grid from Final Fantasy X, which was a favorite mechanic of mine back in the day. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this. The crafting in the game is really nice. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to continuing to play through this.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited you picked it up because I definitely think that's like one of the best games on the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I was just wandering through Walmart the one night, and they had the like complete edition for like $25 or $30. So it came with the whatever it is, like Winds of the North DLC for Frozen
Frozen
Wilds
Wilds,
maybe.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure what that is yet. I'll wait till I get through the main game, but yeah, I've been loving it. I'm really thrilled with this pickup.
Cool. I've not done Frozen Wilds. I think they introduced a couple new enemy types, but I hear it's pretty fun, but I just never got around to picking it up.
The only other thing, I downloaded a game on Steam last night called Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. Have you ever heard of this one?
No, I've not heard of that at all.
It's so I was it was on my like Spotify music you might like list a couple days ago, and it was just the theme song to this game, and it's real folksy, and I've listened to it just kind of on repeat since because I love this song, and so I was like, man, I wonder what this game is about. It looks like you're like a hobo or a drifter in Depression era America, and the entire gameplay is just you traveling like by boxcar or by hiking across the US and telling and collecting stories from the people that you meet.
That's a really interesting premise. I've never heard of a game like that.
Yeah, so it's gotten relatively high reviews on from like the different reviewers, like 8 out of 10 and onwards. So yeah, I'm probably gonna start that tonight here in a little bit, and we'll see how it is. It looks real strange for a video game, but different sometimes means awesome. So we'll see.
Cool. I'm excited to hear about it next week. So this week I've been actually doing it this past week and I'm going to continue doing it. I'm trying to platinum the game Puyo Puyo Tetris. And I gotta say, Christian, I hate this game. I do not like Puyo Puyo. I don't mind. Like I like Tetris. I hate Puyo Puyo, and like I bought this for my wife because I thought she like was trying to get her into games. And I know she likes Tetris, but turns out she also hates Puyo Puyo, so she's not playing it now. So like I was stuck with it at 1%. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna just grit my teeth and go through it. One of the trophies requires me to get 10 wins in ranked matches online, which this game is like 4 years old at this point, so very few people are playing it, and most of the people who are playing it are Japanese, and they're really good, and I'm not. And so it's like I'll go on there and lose in like 30 seconds. And so I'm just like I can't do anything. So I've lucked out and played a couple beginners that I've beaten. I've gotten 7 out of 10 wins, and or 7 of my 10 wins, and I have like 30 something losses. So I just need three more. And then like I'm going through the adventure mode too, which I'm fine on the Tetris stuff. Like that's fine. And then it's like they make you do Puyo Puyo, or they make you swap where it's like half the game's Tetris, half Puyo Puyo. And then there's another one where they combine the two, and I'm just like, God, there's so much, and I still need to get like 30, I think 31% more of this game done. It's been a grind. I might need to take a break because I'm getting very frustrated by it. But otherwise, I'm going to play Devil May Cry 5. That's like a type of game where I for whatever reason I can't just sit down and play it nonstop. Like I treat it like a television series or something where it's like I'll try and play a chapter a day, and so it's like after 20 days, like I beat the game instead of just sitting down and marathoning it, which I don't think is actually that long of a game. But like the mission structure is like like 20 or 30 minute missions, maybe 40. So that's how I like to play it. So those will be the two things I'm playing. I don't know if I do platinum Puyo Puyo if I'll give a full review other than. Alright, guys, thanks for listening to our episode. If you would like to contact us to give a suggestion for our Amazon review game, you can reach us at gambots.blog@gmail.com, or you can reach us on Twitter at Gambots Network. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.